Sometimes the best discoveries are the ones we never went looking for. That's what this video is all about. I'm the Useless Show, and today I'm sharing 183 random facts that prove learning doesn't need a purpose to be worthwhile.
So many questions. Why is the world spinning? Why is the moon keeping its orbit? Can rockets fly backwards? The facts you didn't know you needed. The Useless Show.
Carbs aren't just the stuff in bread or pasta. Deep inside your body, they're working as tiny messengers. Glycobiology is the science that studies how these sugars let your cells talk to each other and even control your immune system. Without this sweet language, your body's defenses wouldn't know when to fight or when to relax. The Roman army had a punishment so terrifying it made soldiers fear their own side more than the enemy. It was called decimation. If a unit failed or mutinied, every 10th man was randomly chosen, then executed by his comrades. Imagine standing in line, hoping fate didn't hand you the deadliest lottery ticket in history. Your brain makes weird connections without you realizing it. Say the word booba, you're gonna feel soft and round, right? Now say kiki, you're sharp and spiky. Across cultures, people agree on this. It's called the booba kiki effect, and it shows how sound and shape are mysteriously linked, even though no one ever taught us that rule. Wall Street has a trick called the green shoe option. During an IPO, if investors go crazy for a company's stock, underwriters can release extra shares to calm the chaos. It's like adding water to soup when more guests show up for dinner, stretching supply to keep everyone satisfied and the market stable. What happens when you smash volleyball, soccer, and trampolines together? You get bossa ball. Played on a giant inflatable court, it looks like a mix of Olympics and circus. Players leap, flip, and kick the ball mid-air while bouncing like acrobats. It's wild, chaotic, and easily the most gravity-defying sport you've probably never tried. Every tree is secretly a historian. Each year, it leaves behind a ring, recording details about climate, drought, and disasters. Dendrochronology is the science of reading those rings. By studying them, scientists can date ancient artifacts, track volcanic eruptions, or even uncover lost civilizations. Turns out, wood remembers everything. You just have to know how to read it. Forget an eye for an eye. The ancient Hittites thought differently. Their laws often replaced revenge with fines. Even serious assaults could be settled with money rather than blood. It wasn't mercy exactly. More like business. To them, justice wasn't about punishment, it was about payment. For the Hittites, crime literally paid, just not for the criminal. Diamonds are tough, but there's something rarer. Lonsdaleite. It's a hexagonal form of carbon, created when meteorites packed with graphite slam into Earth. In theory, it's even harder than diamond. Imagine jewelry forged from the violence of space rock collisions. Not just rare. This gemstone is practically alien armor. Before bows and arrows ruled the hunt, ancient people used a tool called the atlatl. It's a simple lever that lets you hurl spears with deadly speed and distance. Think of it as the Stone Age's sniper rifle. With an atlatl, early hunters could take down prey without getting dangerously close. Survival was all about leverage. Here's one of the strangest human quirks. In Japan, people noticed that stepping into a bookstore sometimes triggered the urge to poop. Yep, it's so common they gave it a name, the Mariko Aoki phenomenon. No one really knows why it happens, but it's proof that even our bowels appreciate the smell of fresh pages. In courtrooms, there's a Latin phrase that does the heavy lifting, res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. If a piano falls from the sky and smashes someone, you don't need proof of negligence. The accident itself is enough to suggest someone clearly messed up. There's a sport where bicycles become soccer shoes. It's called cycle ball, played 2-on-2 on fixed gear bikes with no brakes. Players maneuver and shoot the ball using only their wheels. The result looks half like a circus act, half like a competitive sport, with balance, control, and chaos all colliding on the court. Back in medieval times, magicians had a handbook. The Picatrix was a massive grimoire packed with spells, rituals, and ways to channel planetary energy. It mixed astrology, magic, and philosophy, creating a strange blend of science and sorcery. If you wanted power from the stars, this was your instruction manual. Ever seen a picture within a picture, repeating endlessly? That's the Droste effect. It's named after a Dutch cocoa tin that showed a nurse holding the same cocoa tin, which showed the same nurse again, and so on. It's like a visual loop, a photograph caught staring soaring into infinity. Some metals have a bizarre secret, superplasticity. Heat them just right, and they can stretch to several times their original length without snapping. Imagine pulling a paperclip until it's as long as a shoelace. Engineers dream of using this quirk to shape strong, lightweight materials for things like airplanes and spacecraft. For decades, IQ scores around the world kept rising, a mystery called the Flynn effect. Generations scored higher than their parents on tests of reasoning and problem solving. Whether it's better nutrition, education, or technology shaping sharper minds, the trend showed humanity seemed to be getting steadily smarter. Picture two lumberjacks standing on a log in the water, both trying to spin it under each other's feet. That's log rolling, a sport born from the timber trade. Competitors need balance, speed, and a knack for strategy. One wrong move and you're the one making a splash. The Shroud of Turin's mystery lies in its details. The faint image of a man appears only on the top 2 microfibers of the linen cloth. No paint, no brush strokes, nothing that penetrates deeper. Scientists still struggle to explain how an image so delicate could have been created centuries ago. Long before Kung Fu films, South India had Kalaripayattu, one of the world's oldest martial arts. It teaches strikes, kicks, grappling, weapon use, and even healing techniques. Practitioners move like dancers and fight like warriors, blending grace with brutality in a system that influenced many later fighting traditions. A mortgage isn't just a loan, its roots mean death pledge. From Old French, it symbolized a deal that lived until the debt was repaid or died in failure. A grim name for a house payment, but fitting, since the pledge either ends with ownership or financial ruin. Sound can make light, literally. In a process called sonoluminescence, bubbles trapped in liquid implode when blasted by sound waves, releasing tiny flashes of light. It's like a microscopic lightning storm happening underwater. Scientists still debate the exact physics, but it shows just how weirdly powerful sound can be. In medieval Europe, shipwreck laws weren't kind to sailors. Known as jus naufragii, they allowed local lords to claim anything that washed ashore from a wrecked vessel. Imagine surviving a storm at sea only to find everything you owned now legally belonged to the man on the beach. Millions of years ago, South America's top predator wasn't a big cat. It was a bird. Terror birds stood up to 10 feet tall with massive hooked beaks. Flightless but fast, they hunted like sprinting assassins. For nearly 60 million years, these feathered giants ruled before predators with sharper teeth took over. There's a way to hide a secret message in plain sight. Steganography. Unlike encryption, which scrambles text, this method conceals information inside another file. A picture might hold hidden words in its pixels. To most people, it's just an image, but for the intended receiver, it's a coded message. Investors love shortcuts, and the rule of 72 is one of the simplest. Divide 72 by your interest rate, and you'll know how many years it takes to double your money. At 6%, that's about 12 years. It's fast math that makes compound interest a little less mysterious. Step into an Ames room, and suddenly your sense of scale collapses. One person looks like a giant, the other like a child. Even if they're the same size, it's all a trick of distorted architecture, warping perspective so your brain insists on an illusion your eyes can't escape. About 541 million years ago, life exploded in creativity. The Cambrian explosion filled the oceans with bizarre creatures. Trilobites, spiny worms, armored oddities. Almost every major animal group appeared within a geological blink of an eye. It was evolution's greatest brainstorm session, setting the stage for the complex life we see today. The medieval assize of bread and ale was one of England's earliest consumer protection laws. It set rules for the price, weight, and quality of bread and beer. Bakers who cheated risked fines, pillories, or even jail. In a time when bread was survival, this law kept greed from starving the poor. A Lazarus taxon is a species that vanishes from the fossil record for ages, then reappears as if resurrected. The coelacanth is the poster child, thought extinct for 65 million years until one turned up in a fisherman's net. Nature sometimes hides, only to remind us it never left. Deja vu feels like a glitch in the Matrix, but neurologists think it's your brain misfiring. Neural pathways overlap just enough to trick you into believing you've lived the moment before. It's not prophecy or magic. just memory wires crossed, turning the present into an eerie echo of the past. The word grok came from Robert Heinlein's novel Stranger in a Strange Land. In computing, it means grasping something so deeply you become one with it. Hackers and programmers adopted it because understanding wasn't enough. To grok is to absorb knowledge until it's part of your instincts, not just your brain. The malice at the palace in 2004 was more than a foul. A hard shove spiraled into one of the NBA's ugliest brawls, with players storming into the stands and fans throwing punches back. The fallout brought suspensions, arrests, and a stain on the league's reputation that still lingers in highlight reels. The Potosi silver mines of Bolivia fueled an empire. So much silver poured out that Spain flooded Europe with coins, causing inflation that rippled across the globe. Miners worked in brutal conditions, but their mountain became a world bank. At its peak, people said a road of silver could be built to Madrid. The Leiden-Frost effect happens when water dances on a skillet. On a surface hot enough, droplets don't boil away instantly. They skate on a cushion of their own vapor. The thin layer keeps them alive longer, fizzing and darting around like quicksilver. It's physics turning heat into a magic trick. Gigantopithecus blacka was a true giant of prehistory. 3 meters tall, weighing half a ton, and walking the forests of Asia alongside early humans. Its jawbones hint at a massive vegetarian diet, but fossils are scarce. What's certain is that humans once shared land with an ape that would have dwarfed them. Ancient Mesopotamian rulers marked land rights with carved stones called kuduru. These boundary markers listed the king's grant and summoned curses from gods against anyone who dared move or deface them. Owning land wasn't just legal, it was sacred. The stone warned that breaking the deal meant angering heaven itself. The Beaufort scale turns wind into a language. Created in the early 1800s, it linked wind speeds with what sailors saw at sea or on land. Ripples, waves, bending trees, or full-blown destruction. From a calm breeze to hurricane force, it gave mariners a shared code to measure nature's temper. The Tully monster, or Tullimonstrum gregarium, looked like evolution doodled outside the lines. With a tube-like body, stalked eyes, and a long proboscis ending in pincers, it baffled scientists for decades. Found only in Illinois shale, this 300-million-year-old oddity was finally classified as a vertebrate, though it still feels like a prank from nature. Ukiyo-e was Japan's art of the floating world. Woodblock prints captured kabuki actors, courtesans, landscapes, and myths in bold colors that anyone could afford. Mass-produced, they spread culture like posters and postcards. Artists like Hokusai turned everyday moments into icons, giving the fleeting pleasures of Edo-era life a place in history. The legal defense of necessity argues that breaking the law may be excused if it prevents a greater harm, like smashing a window to escape a fire. Yet courts rarely accept it. Judges tend to view greater harm as a slippery excuse, which means this defense usually fails before it even gets started. The Collatz conjecture, introduced by Lothar Collatz in 1937, suggests that if you take any number, have it if even, or triple, and add 1 if odd, you will always end at 1. Mathematicians have tested trillions of numbers without finding an exception. Proof, however, still remains stubbornly absent. Stone skipping has a world championship in Easdale, Scotland, where competitors fling flat stones across water to see how many times they bounce. Kurt Steiner holds the record at 88 skips in 2013. Physics matters here. Flatter stones, lower angles, and smooth water decide who reigns as the king of skipping. Bertrand Russell's teapot analogy, written in 1952, imagines a small teapot orbiting between Earth and Mars. His idea was simple. The burden of proof lies on the person making an unfalsifiable claim, not others to disprove it. Philosophy, it turns out, sometimes needs crockery to make a point. The Panama Canal, built between 1904 and 1914, required cutting through mountains with steam shovels and lifting ships 26 meters with locks. The United States spent nearly $400 million, while over 25,000 workers died, mostly from malaria and accidents. The payoff? Ships avoid a 2-week detour around South America. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, oddly named after a German militant group from the 1970s, describes when something newly learned suddenly appears everywhere. Psychologists call it the frequency illusion. Your brain simply notices it more often, fooling you into thinking the world has suddenly conspired to put that word on every billboard. The Arthashastra, composed in the 3rd century BCE by the Indian scholar Chanakya, is a detailed manual on governance, economics, and military tactics. It covers taxation, law enforcement, diplomacy, and even spy networks. Imagine a mix of political science and espionage advice, 2,000 years before modern textbooks existed. Cheese rolling in Gloucestershire, England is an annual race down Cooper's Hill after a 4-kilogram wheel of double Gloucester cheese. Competitors tumble, crash, and often require medical attention. The cheese nearly always outpaces everyone, reminding us that dairy is surprisingly aerodynamic. The winner keeps the cheese, assuming they survive the hill. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis in linguistics proposes that language shapes how people perceive the world. For example, Inuit languages distinguish many kinds of snow, influencing how speakers think about it. While debated, the theory highlights the strange possibility that vocabulary itself bends thought, turning grammar into something more than just rules. Eminent domain is a legal principle allowing governments to seize private property for public projects, provided just compensation is paid. Highways, railroads, and bridges have all relied on this power, yet compensation often feels less than fair, making citizens wonder if just is really just shorthand for you get less. The Tyndall effect, explained by physicist John Tyndall in 1869, describes how light scatters when it hits tiny particles in air or liquid. It is why sunbeams appear in dusty rooms or fog. Essentially, your messy attic doubles as a free physics demonstration every time sunlight sneaks through a crack. The mathematical constant E, discovered in the 1600s by Jacob Bernoulli, is about 2.718 and is vital in describing continuous growth or decay. It appears in compound interest, population models, and radioactive decay. Like pi, it hides everywhere. Your savings account unfortunately demonstrates a far more painfully than beautifully. Shin kicking, part of the Cotswold Olympics since the 1600s, pits 2 contestants against each other in a test of tolerance. Fighters stuff hay into trousers and repeatedly kick one another's shins until someone falls. It is combat reduced to its simplest and most painful form. Britain somehow calls this sporting tradition. The Mithric Mysteries were a Roman religion practiced from the 1st to 4th century CE, worshipping the god Mithras. Initiations took place in underground temples, or Mithraea, decorated with images of Mithras slaying a bull. The secrecy means much remains unknown, making this cult one of history's more frustrating puzzles. Supercooling allows pure water to dip below 0 degrees Celsius without freezing, provided it stays undisturbed. The moment you shake it, it instantly crystallizes into ice. This odd trick of physics demonstrates that nature can delay the inevitable, only to unleash it dramatically, like a magician saving the reveal until last. The geoid is Earth's true shape if only gravity and rotation acted on it. Far from a neat sphere, it resembles a slightly lumpy potato. Scientists use it as the reference surface for measuring elevation. Maps pretend Earth is smooth, but the geoid proves our planet has terrible posture. Droit de seigneur, the supposed medieval right of lords to sleep with a vassal's bride, is widely regarded as a myth. Historians find little evidence it was ever practiced. Still, the tale persisted for centuries, perhaps because it fit neatly into stories of corrupt rulers behaving badly on wedding nights. The Maunder minimum between 1645 and 1715 was a 70-year period of unusually low sunspot activity. It overlapped with the Little Ice Age, when Europe endured bitterly cold winters. The sun, normally full of fiery energy, seemed to take an extended nap, plunging humanity into centuries of frostier mornings. Slam ball, invented in Los Angeles in 2002, blends basketball with trampolines placed in front of each net. Players bounce into gravity-defying dunks, cushioned by padded walls. Though short-lived on television, the sport gained fans in the US and China, proof that trampolines can improve nearly any competitive activity, including basketball. The Vinland sagas, written in Iceland around the 13th century, describe Leif Erikson's voyages to North America nearly 5 centuries before Columbus. They mention lands called Helluland, Markland, and Vinland, believed to be parts of modern Canada. The sagas mix history and legend, but archaeological finds at L'Anse aux Meadows confirm at least some of their accuracy. Peto's paradox observes that cancer rates don't increase with body size or lifespan. A blue whale has about 3,000 times more cells than a human, yet isn't riddled with tumors. Biologists think evolution gave larger animals better cancer defenses, though it does leave mice looking suspiciously unlucky in comparison. Scagliola, developed in the 17th century Italy, is the craft of faking marble using plaster, glue, and pigments, polished to a glossy finish. It became popular in churches and palaces where budgets couldn't stretch to real marble. In short, it's luxury stonework for people who want the look without the weight. The medieval Welsh laws of Hywel Dyddia, compiled in the 10th century, put price tags on body parts and belongings. Losing a finger, that's worth a set number of cows. Even insults could be compensated with livestock. Justice in Wales, it seems, worked like a particularly complicated shopping list. The Gibbs-Donnan effect in cell biology explains why ions arrange unevenly across a semi-permeable membrane when some molecules can't pass through. First described by physicists Josiah Willard Gibbs and Frederick Donnan, it helps explain nerve function and cell balance. In essence, your cells are forever negotiating a very unfair trade agreement. Gugu Yimithir, a language spoken by Aboriginal people in northern Queensland, Australia, doesn't use left or right. Instead, speakers give directions with cardinal points: north, south, east, west. To speak it properly, you must know where you are at all times. It's a language that forces you to be your own compass. Palmyra, in present-day Syria, was a rich caravan city linking Rome to Persia and the Silk Road. Its mix of Greco-Roman colonnades and Eastern temples reflected that crossroads. In the 3rd century CE, Queen Zenobia briefly ruled an empire from Palmyra, until Rome crushed her revolt. Today, its ruins still hint at lost grandeur. The modern 40-foot shipping container, standardized in the 1950s, includes hollow steel corner castings. These allow containers to be locked, stacked, lifted by cranes, and secured on ships or trains. The humble detail helped revolutionize global trade, making it easier to move goods worldwide than to move your couch upstairs. The Kirkpatrick sale of 1971 saw New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art auction off works it no longer wanted, including a Velázquez portrait. The sale provoked outrage. Why was a major museum selling masterpieces? It sparked long-running debates about deaccessioning, or how far museums should go in tidying their storerooms. Vierleppen, a Dutch sport dating back centuries, involves sprinting with a long pole, planting it in a canal, and climbing it as it tips forward to leap as far as possible. Distances can exceed 20 meters. It's part athletics, part circus act, and entirely proof that the Dutch hate getting wet feet. The Gutenberg Bible, printed in Mainz, Germany around 1455, was the first major book produced with movable metal type. Interestingly, Gutenberg left blank spaces in the margins, so artists could later hand-paint ornate initials and decorations. Even the dawn of mass printing couldn't quite give up on medieval flair. The Turing test, proposed by Alan Turing in 1950, measures whether a machine can imitate human conversation so well that a person can't tell the difference. It doesn't ask if machines think, only if they can fake it convincingly. In other words, intelligence is judged by passing as a chatty company. The Vamic courts of medieval Westphalia were secret tribunals dating to the 13th century, authorized to impose even death sentences. Members swore secrecy, met in hidden locations, and carved symbols into trees to announce their rulings. Justice in this case looked more like a mysterious club with very sharp consequences. The Purkinje effect, named after Czech physiologist John Purkinje, describes how human vision shifts in dim light. As illumination decreases, our eyes become more sensitive to blue-green wavelengths than reds. That's why red flowers fade at dusk while blue ones stand out. Night vision, it seems, comes with a color bias. The Soviet dead hand system, built in the 1980s, was an automatic nuclear command mechanism. If sensors detected a strike and leaders couldn't respond, it would launch missiles in retaliation. Designed to guarantee mutual destruction, it was essentially a doomsday machine that made sure no one won a nuclear war. The Pomodoro technique, created by Francesco Cirillo in the 1980s, uses a kitchen timer, originally shaped like a tomato, hence Pomodoro, to divide work work into 25-minute sessions with short breaks. It's a simple method to maintain focus, proving that sometimes productivity depends less on willpower and more on kitchen utensils. Adverse possession is a legal principle that allows someone who openly occupies another person's land for a set period, often 10 to 20 years, to claim legal ownership. The logic is that land should be used, not left idle. For property owners, it's a reminder that fences and vigilance are better than after-the-fact lawsuits. Kabaddi, in its circle-style variant, is especially popular in Punjab, India. Unlike the rectangular version seen in international matches, it is played on a circular field and skips some revival rules. The game emphasizes agility and strength, with raiders darting in and out like sprinters caught in a wrestling match. The Coanda effect, identified by Romanian engineer Henry Coanda in 1930, is the tendency of a fluid jet to cling to a curved surface. In aviation, this principle helps explain how airflow sticks to wings, enhancing lift. It's one reason airplanes fly smoothly instead of behaving like badly thrown paper planes. Pro hac vice, Latin for this occasion, allows a lawyer to appear in a court where they are not licensed, but only for a single case. The rule balances flexibility with control, letting specialized lawyers travel across jurisdictions without turning every trial into a legal free-for-all. Pesapallo, known as Finnish baseball, was created in the 1930s by Lauri Taco Pekala. It features an unusual vertical pitch and a zigzag base path. Though inspired by American baseball, the irregular field and fast pace make it a uniquely Finnish sport. Less predictable, but far more entertaining to watch. The Kessler syndrome, proposed by NASA scientist Donald Kessler in 1978, describes a scenario where orbital debris collides and fragments, creating more debris in a chain reaction. If it occurred, low Earth orbit could become impassable. Essentially, too much space junk could trap humanity on the very planet it's cluttering. The Pygmalion effect is a psychological phenomenon where higher expectations lead to improved performance. First studied by Robert Rosenthal in the 1960s, it shows how teachers' beliefs about students can shape outcomes. When people expect greatness, others often rise to meet it, though the reverse, called the golem effect, is equally true. The putting out system, used widely in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries, was a way of organizing textile production before factories. Merchants supplied raw materials to households, which spun or wove them at home. It offered flexibility, but also marked the transition toward industrialization, where central workshops replaced cottage labor. The Kelvin-Helmholtz instability occurs when two fluids move at different speeds across a shared boundary, creating rolling wave-like patterns. It explains the billowing clouds seen in the sky and even turbulence at sea. Nature in this case shows off its flair for fluid dynamics with a painter's touch. The Magnus effect, first described by Heinrich Magnus in 1852, explains why spinning balls curve through the air. The rotation changes air pressure on each side of the ball, creating sideways force. It's why soccer free kicks bend, tennis serves swerve, and baseball pitchers look like they're performing magic. Botaoshi, a Japanese sport played at the National Defense Academy, involves two teams of 150 cadets each. The goal is to topple the opponent's 3 to 5 meter pole while defending your own. The match looks like organized chaos. Part rugby, part martial arts, and part human pyramid gone wrong. Mozi, a Chinese philosopher of the 5th century BCE, promoted universal love but paired it with practical engineering. He designed defensive weapons, including siege machines, to protect cities from attack. His unusual blend of moral philosophy and military science made him both a thinker and a tactician ahead of his time. The Streisand effect, named after singer Barbra Streisand, describes how trying to suppress information can backfire. In 2003, her lawsuit to remove aerial photos of her Malibu home only made them famous. Since then, the term has applied to countless cases where censorship efforts achieve the opposite result. Art restorers sometimes attach a wooden cradle to the back of panel paintings, especially Renaissance works, to stop the wood from warping or splitting. This grid of support stabilizes fragile artworks but is controversial today, as cradling can restrict natural movement of the wood and cause new damage over time. The Monocton Rule, established in 1843 after Daniel Monocton's trial for assassination in Britain, sets the legal standard for insanity. It asks whether the defendant knew what they were doing or understood it was wrong. The test remains influential worldwide, though critics argue it oversimplifies complex mental health conditions. The Chimu culture of northern Peru, flourishing between the 9th and 15th centuries, crafted ceramic whistling vessels. When filled with water or tilted, they produced eerie sounds, sometimes imitating birds or wind. These artifacts combined art, music, and ritual, turning everyday objects into instruments with a haunting voice of their own. Sepak takraw, played across Southeast Asia, resembles volleyball, but with a twist. Players use only their feet, knees, chest, or head to strike the ball. Originating centuries ago, it demands acrobatic kicks and mid-air flips. Watching a match feels less like a ball game and more like a martial arts exhibition. The Mahabharata, composed in ancient India and attributed to Vyasa, is one of the longest epics ever written. At around 200,000 verse lines, it is nearly 10 times the length of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey combined. Beyond battles and gods, it weaves philosophy, law, and ethics into a vast cultural encyclopedia. A moire pattern emerges when two grids or striped designs are layered slightly out of alignment, creating a larger wavy interference image. It can appear in fabrics, screens, or printed images. What seems like optical trickery is simply physics reminding us that overlapping order can produce a surprising kind of chaos. Usufruct is a legal right, granting someone use and enjoyment of another's property without owning it. The condition: the property cannot be damaged or altered. Roman law formalized the concept, and it survives in civil law systems today. In essence, usufruct lets you borrow the fruit of an orchard without uprooting the trees. The so-called Great Horse Manure Crisis of 1894 reflected fears that growing cities would drown in waste from horse-drawn transport. London predicted 9 feet of manure within decades. The crisis never happened. The invention of motor vehicles solved it, proving that sometimes one environmental disaster is replaced by another on wheels. The Tsiolkovsky rocket equation, formulated in 1903 by Russian scientist Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, describes how a rocket's velocity depends on exhaust speed and the ratio of initial to final mass. It underpins modern astronautics, explaining why reaching orbit demands staging, fuel efficiency, and very large tanks for relatively small payloads. Shinty, a Scottish sport with ancient roots, resembles field hockey but allows players to strike the ball in the air and use both sides of the stick. Still played in the Highlands, it influenced the development of ice hockey in Canada. Fast, physical, and traditional, Shinty is Scottish heritage on a field. The Enshu style, founded by Enshu Ito Ryu in the 17th century Japan, blends martial arts with ikebana, the art of flower arrangement. Practitioners trained in both swordsmanship and aesthetics. The unlikely pairing reflects a samurai ideal: discipline and combat balanced by refinement and beauty. Violence and flowers coexisted under one philosophy. Respondet superior, Latin for let the master answer, is a legal doctrine making employers responsible for wrongful acts committed by employees during their work. Rooted in English common law, it explains why companies, not just individuals, are sued for workplace negligence. Responsibility in this sense trickles upward rather than down. The Rayleigh-Taylor instability occurs when a lighter fluid pushes into a heavier one. Think oil rising through water or the billowing edges of supernova clouds. First studied by Lord Rayleigh and Geoffrey Taylor, it produces striking wave-like patterns. Physics, it seems, can turn even turbulence into abstract art. Excavations at Gath, one of the 5 Philistine cities and traditionally home to Goliath, reveal a sophisticated culture with Aegean ties. Finds include impressive fortifications, pottery, and evidence of trade. Far from biblical caricatures, the Philistines appear as complex urban people, blending Mediterranean influences into their Levantine setting. The familiar red, yellow, green traffic light sequence was standardized in 1920 by Detroit police officer William Potts, adapting railroad signals for automobiles. His system helped tame chaotic intersections in an age before seatbelts and brake lights. A century later, his color scheme still dictates global driving habits with unblinking authority. Garnishment is a legal tool, allowing creditors to collect debts by taking a debtor's property or wages through a third party, such as an employer or bank. Courts authorize the process, ensuring repayment without requiring physical repossession. For debtors, it's a reminder that ignoring obligations can follow them straight to payday. The Poynting-Robertson effect, described by John Henry Poynting and Howard Percy Robertson, explains how solar radiation gradually robs dust grains in orbit of energy, pulling them inward toward the sun. It's a slow cosmic cleaning service, ensuring that even interplanetary dust can't spin lazily around forever. The Kingdom of Kush, based in Nubia, south of Egypt, conquered its neighbor in the 8th century BCE and ruled as the 25th dynasty. Kushite pharaohs like Paye and Taharqa are depicted with distinct features and cultural styles, blending African and Egyptian traditions. Their reign marked a remarkable reversal of power along the Nile. Kinball, invented in Quebec in 1986, is a sport where 3 teams of 4 players compete using a giant ball measuring 1.22 meters across. The serving team calls out another team's color, forcing them to catch it before it touches the ground. Strategy, speed, and teamwork matter, but so does not getting flattened. The medieval Icelandic sagas, written between the 12th and 14th centuries, recount tales of settlement, feuds, and exploration. Though filled with drama and stylization, they were treated as reliable history for centuries. Beyond battles, they record social customs, inheritance laws, and everyday life, making them an unusual blend of literature and anthropology. The Bearglass effect, named after British magician David Bearglass, is regarded as the holy grail of card tricks. A spectator names any card and any position in a shuffled deck, and the performer reveals it flawlessly. The method remains secret even among magicians, making the trick more legendary than explainable. Benford's law, observed by physicist Frank Benford in 1938, shows that in many datasets, the number 1 appears as the first digit about 30% of the time, while 9 appears less than 5%. It helps auditors detect fraud, since fake numbers often fail to follow this naturally skewed distribution. Eton Fives is a handball-like game played on a 3-walled court modeled after the architecture of Eton College's chapel steps. Teams of 2 strike a small leather ball with gloved hands, ricocheting it off walls and ledges. Popular at public schools in England, the game remains a curious hybrid of sport and architecture. The Uluburun shipwreck, discovered in 1982 off Turkey's coast, dates to the 14th century BCE. The cargo included copper ingots, tin, ivory, glass, and luxury goods from at least 7 cultures, linking the Near East, Africa, and Europe. It is one of the richest Bronze Age finds, revealing a world tied together by trade. The Birch and Swinnerton Dyer conjecture, proposed in the 1960s, is one of mathematics' 7 Millennium Prize problems. It concerns elliptic curves and whether they have finitely or infinitely many rational solutions. Despite decades of progress, a complete proof remains unsolved. Mathematicians still chase the $1 million prize attached to this elusive riddle. A spendthrift trust is a legal arrangement designed to protect a beneficiary's inheritance from wasteful spending or aggressive creditors. Trustees control the funds, releasing them under set conditions. Common in estate planning, it prevents heirs from gambling away their fortune, proving that sometimes the dead have better judgment than the living. The Laki eruption of 1783 in Iceland spewed lava across 600 square kilometers and released vast amounts of sulfur dioxide. The resulting haze caused crop failures, livestock deaths, and famine that killed about a quarter of Iceland's population. Its effects spread across Europe, reminding the continent how fragile life is under volcanoes. Xanadu, or Chengdu, built in 1256 as Kublai Khan's summer capital, blended Chinese urban design with Mongol nomadic traditions. Chinese architect Liu Bingzhong laid out the city with palaces, gardens, and hunting grounds. Marco Polo later described it with awe, though Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem made its name immortal in Western imagination. The Toda language, spoken by the Toda people of southern India's Nilgiri Hills, has one of the world's most complex sound systems. It includes 16 vowels and numerous consonants with subtle variations. Preserving it is vital as the language embodies cultural traditions, rituals, and songs unique to a small pastoral community. The Zollverein, established in 1834 under Prussian leadership, unified dozens of German states into a single customs union. By removing internal tariffs, it boosted trade and industrialization. Long before Germany's political unification in 1871, the Zollverein quietly stitched its economy together, proving money can bind what politics cannot. An inchoate offense is a legal term for crimes that are attempted but unfinished, like conspiracy, solicitation, or attempted robbery. Courts punish them to discourage people from planning harm, even if the act never succeeds. In law, intent matters almost as much as outcome, so thinking criminally can already be criminal. The Wilson cycle, named after geologist John Tuzo Wilson, describes how continents drift, break apart, form oceans, and eventually collide again. This cycle of rifting, spreading, and subduction takes hundreds of millions of years. It explains why the Atlantic Ocean is widening today and why it may someday vanish entirely. The quantum Zeno effect shows that constantly observing an unstable quantum system can actually stop it from changing. First noted in the 1970s, it's like staring at a pot of water so intently that it really never boils. In quantum mechanics, measurement itself becomes a kind of interference with time. Pelota Purepecha, a traditional Mexican game with pre-Hispanic origins, is played using curved wooden sticks to strike a ball, sometimes set on fire through a stone hoop. Still practiced in Michoacan, it resembles both hockey and ritual spectacle. Playing at night with a flaming ball is both dramatic and frankly slightly hazardous. Prussian blue, discovered accidentally in 1706 by Berlin color maker Johann Jakob Diesbach, was the first modern synthetic pigment. He was trying to make a red dye but produced a deep blue instead. The pigment became prized in painting, used by artists like Hokusai in his Great Wave, a mistake turned masterpiece. The Gish Gallop, named after creationist debater Duane Gish, is a rhetorical trick. Overwhelm your opponent with a barrage of weak arguments faster than they can be refuted. Each point may be flimsy, but taken together they create an illusion of strength. It's the debating equivalent of death by paper cuts. Probate is the legal process of proving a will's validity after someone dies. A court confirms the document as the deceased's true final testament and oversees the distribution of property. It provides order, but can be slow, meaning heirs often inherit both assets and long hours of paperwork. Valencian Pelota, a traditional sport from Spain's Valencia region, has several variants played either on streets or in specialized courts called trinquets. Players strike a heavy leather ball with bare hands, sometimes wrapped in minimal protection. With roots stretching back centuries, the game is as much cultural ritual as sport. The Haber-Bosch process, developed in 1909 by Fritz Haber and scaled industrially by Karl Bosch, synthesizes ammonia by combining nitrogen and hydrogen under high pressure and temperature. It made artificial fertilizers possible, sustaining billions of lives. The same process, however, also enabled production of explosives, feeding both agriculture and warfare. Cloth of gold, a fabric woven from silk and gold threads, was so precious in the Middle Ages that kings and nobles listed it in wills and treasuries. Its name lives on in the Field of the Cloth of Gold, a 1520 meeting between Henry VIII and Francis I, where politics was dressed in luxury. The Euthyphro dilemma, from Plato's dialogue Euthyphro, questions whether morality depends on divine command or exists independently. Is something good because the gods will it, or do they will it because it is good? This ancient puzzle remains central to debates in ethics, theology, and the philosophy of law. Nunc pro tunc, Latin for now for then, describes a court order that corrects a past ruling to match what the court originally intended. It doesn't change the law retroactively, but tidies up the record. Essentially, the legal system allows itself the occasional clerical time machine. The Oort cloud is a theoretical shell of icy bodies orbiting the sun at distances up to 200,000 astronomical units, proposed by Jan Oort in 1950. It is thought to be the source of long-period comets. Though unobserved directly, it represents the solar system's frozen outer archives. Pétanque, a French game in the Boulez family, involves tossing hollow steel balls toward a small wooden target called the cochonnet. Played on gravel, it emphasizes precision over strength. Popular in Mediterranean squares, pétanque is less about athleticism and more about strategy, patience, and perhaps a glass of pastis nearby. The Byzantine chain, a complex method of linking rings, creates a dense, flexible rope-like design. Historically used in both armor and jewelry, it balances strength with elegance. Its interwoven structure made it useful for protection in battle, while its intricate beauty ensured it never stayed confined to the battlefield. Amdahl's law, formulated by Jean Amdahl in 1967, calculates the maximum improvement in computing speed when parallel processing is applied. It shows that bottlenecks in non-parallel parts limit efficiency. In short, throwing more processors at a problem won't help if the real slowdown is in code that refuses to share. A non-disclosure agreement, or NDA, is a contract that binds parties to confidentiality about sensitive information. Common in business, it protects trade secrets, designs, or negotiations from leaking. While NDAs create trust and legal recourse, they are also infamous for being misused to silence criticism or keep inconvenient facts hidden. The Permian-Triassic extinction event, about 252 million years ago, was Earth's deadliest known mass extinction, likely triggered by massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia. It wiped out around 90% of marine species and 70% of land vertebrates. This great dying reshaped life on Earth, paving the way for the age of dinosaurs. The Barnum effect, named after showman P.T. Barnum, describes how people accept vague, general personality statements as uniquely accurate. Psychologist Bertram Ferrer demonstrated this in 1949 by giving students identical personalized profiles, which they rated highly. Horoscopes, fortune-telling, and online quizzes thrive on this curious bias in human self-perception. Underwater hockey, also called octopush, is played at the bottom of a swimming pool. Teams use short sticks to push a weighted puck into the opponent's goal trough while holding their breath. Invented in England in 1954, it combines the strategy of hockey with the lung capacity of very optimistic swimmers. The Domesday Book, completed in 1086 on the orders of William the Conqueror, recorded land holdings, resources, and taxes across England. It provided a snapshot of medieval society, who owned what, how much land was worth, and how many pigs were around. It remains one of history's most thorough tax audits. The Biefeld-Brown effect, first reported by physicist Paul Biefeld and engineer Thomas Townsend Brown in the 1920s, claims an electrical force arises from asymmetrical capacitor electrodes. While some touted it as anti-gravity, later experiments suggest the force is due to ionized air movement. Physics in this case is less magic than airflow. Taxila, located in present-day Pakistan, was a major learning center from the 5th century BCE to the 5th century CE. It hosted scholars in medicine, law, and philosophy, drawing students from across Asia and even Greece. Archaeological remains show monasteries and lecture halls, marking it as one of antiquity's great universities. Double jeopardy, rooted in English common law and enshrined in modern constitutions, prevents someone from being tried twice for the same offense after acquittal or conviction. The principle protects against abuse of power and endless retrials. Justice, it insists, should be fair, even if verdicts aren't always popular. The Pioneer anomaly puzzled scientists when Pioneer 10 and 11, launched in the early 1970s, drifted slightly off predicted trajectories. For years, exotic theories circulated. In 2012, careful analysis showed the cause. Uneven heat radiation from the spacecraft's systems nudged them gently off course. Mystery solved by thermodynamics, not aliens. The Tanganyika laughter epidemic began in 1962 at a girls' school in Tanzania, spreading uncontrollably through communities. Thousands were affected, with fits lasting hours or days. Doctors diagnosed it as a mass psychogenic illness triggered by stress. It's an unsettling reminder of how emotions, and even laughter, can spread like contagion. Orienteering is a competitive sport requiring participants to navigate between checkpoints using only a detailed map and a compass. Originating in Sweden in the late 19th century, it combines running with problem solving. Courses can span forests, mountains, or urban areas, making it equal parts athletics, geography lesson, and mental puzzle. The Hittites, centered in Anatolia around 1600 BCE, were among the first civilizations to systematically work iron. Their weapons and tools gave them military and economic advantages, helping them challenge Egypt and dominate the late Bronze Age. This early mastery reshaped warfare and marked a turning point in human technology. The Laffer curve, popularized by economist Arthur Laffer in the 1970s, illustrates that beyond a certain point, raising tax rates reduces government revenue because people stop working or evade tax. While simple in theory, it remains politically controversial, often appearing in debates over tax cuts and fiscal policy. Damascening is the decorative art of inlaying precious metals like gold or silver into steel or iron, creating intricate designs. Practiced in places like Spain, Japan, and the Middle East, it adorned weapons, armor, and jewelry. The striking contrast between dark steel and gleaming metal made objects both functional and beautiful. A letter of marque and reprisal was a government license granting private ship owners, privateers, the right to attack and capture enemy vessels. Common from the 16th to 19th centuries, it blurred the line between piracy and legitimate warfare. Profitable but risky, it turned naval conflict into a semi-privatized business venture. The Kardashev scale, proposed by Soviet astronomer Nikolai Nikolai Kardashev in 1964 measures civilizations by energy use. Type 1 harnesses planetary energy, Type 2 captures the stars, and Type 3 controls the galaxies. Humanity isn't even Type 1 yet, which makes our ambitions for space empires a bit premature. The Gell-Mann amnesia effect, named by physicist Murray Gell-Mann, describes reading a news article on a subject you know and spotting obvious errors, then flipping the page and trusting the next story on a subject you don't know. It highlights how selective skepticism makes us oddly gullible. Fistball, a team sport resembling volleyball, is played outdoors with 5 players per side. The ball is struck with fists or forearms, allowed 1 bounce before return. Originating in Europe, it remains popular in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The game combines precision with brute force, producing rallies that can stretch across fields. Susa, in modern Iran, was a major capital of the Achaemenid Empire, and an important city for over 2 millennia. It appears in the Book of Esther as the setting of Persian court intrigue. Archaeology reveals palaces and ziggurats, showing its role as both political center and cultural crossroads. Bandy, often called the original ice hockey, is played on a rink the size of a soccer field with 11 players aside. Unlike hockey, players chase a small ball instead of a puck. Originating in 19th century England and popular in Russia and Scandinavia, it remains a fast, sweeping winter sport. Zipf's law, observed by linguist George Zipf in the 1930s, states that the frequency of a word is inversely proportional to its rank in usage. For example, the second most common word appears about half as often as the first. This odd mathematical regularity shows up in language, city sizes, and even wealth distribution. Micromosaic is the art of assembling detailed images from countless tiny pieces of glass or enamel, sometimes smaller than a millimeter. Perfected in the 18th century Vatican workshops, the technique decorated jewelry, tables, and devotional art. The astonishing precision creates works that look like paintings until viewed closely, where thousands of glittering fragments emerge. A per curiam decision is a court ruling issued collectively by an appellate bench, rather than authored by a single judge. Latin for by the court, it usually applies to unanimous or straightforward judgments. The anonymity emphasizes institutional voice over individual reasoning, judicial teamwork in its most formal expression. Runge-Kutta methods, named after German mathematicians Karl Runge and Wilhelm Kutta, are step-by-step techniques developed around 1900 to approximate solutions of differential equations. Widely used in engineering and physics, they allow complex problems, from modeling planetary motion to predicting chemical reactions, to be tackled by computer with manageable accuracy. The Tarim mummies, discovered in western China's Xinjiang region, date from 1800 BCE onward and display Caucasoid features, including red or blonde hair. Their wool textiles resemble European styles, suggesting early links across Eurasia. These remarkably preserved remains continue to challenge simple narratives about ancient migration and cultural exchange. The Ilbert Bill of 1883 in British India sought to allow Indian judges to try British subjects in criminal cases. The proposal sparked fierce opposition from Europeans, exposing deep racial hierarchies in colonial society. Though watered down, the controversy highlighted the limits of reform under empire and the fragility of British rule. Tandem surfing involves 2 riders, traditionally a man and a woman, sharing one board while performing acrobatic lifts and poses on a moving wave. Popularized in Hawaii in the 1950s, it combines the balance of surfing with the grace of dance and gymnastics. Success depends on timing, strength, and trust between partners. The Biot-Savart law, named after Jean-Baptiste Biot and Félix Savart, describes the magnetic field generated by a steady electric current. Published in 1820, it shows how current-carrying wires produce fields that curve through space. The law is still used to calculate magnetism in devices from solenoids to electric motors. Kyoto, Japan's imperial capital from 794 to 1868, housed emperors for more than a millennium. Known for wooden townhouses, Zen gardens, and thousands of temples, it preserved traditional culture even as political power shifted to Edo. Today it remains the cultural heart of Japan, a city where centuries of heritage coexist with modern life. Gauss's law for magnetism, part of Maxwell's equations, states that the divergence of a magnetic field is 0. In simpler terms, there are no isolated magnetic poles. North and south always come as pairs. The principle captures the symmetry of magnetism, even though physicists still wonder if magnetic monopoles might exist. Fraud is the intentional act of deceiving someone to secure unlawful or unfair gain. It spans false advertising, forged documents, and financial scams. In legal systems worldwide, fraud is both both civil and criminal, reflecting society's view that dishonesty in pursuit of profit undermines trust as much as it steals money. Rome, the eternal city, has stood at the center of politics, religion, and culture for over 2,500 years. From the Roman Republic and Empire to the papacy, it shaped Western civilization. Monuments like the Colosseum, the Forum, and St. Peter's Basilica trace its continuous influence from antiquity to the present. Snell's law, discovered by Willibrord Snellius in 1621, relates the angles of incidence and refraction when light passes between two media, like air and water. The formula explains why a stick looks bent in a pond and underlies technologies from lenses to fiber optics. Refraction, it turns out, is predictably mathematical. American football developed in the late 19th century from rugby and soccer, evolving unique features like the forward pass and line of scrimmage. Walter Camp, known as the father of American football, helped codify its rules. Today, the sport is central to US culture, producing massive stadiums, rivalries, and the Super Bowl spectacle. Bragg's Law, discovered in 1913 by William Henry Bragg and his son William Lawrence Bragg, gives the angles at which X-rays are diffracted by a crystal lattice. The principle allows scientists to determine atomic structures, revolutionizing crystallography. Its applications include mapping DNA's double helix and analyzing complex proteins. Florence, birthplace of the Renaissance, flourished under the Medici family in the 15th century. Its landmarks include Brunelleschi's Duomo, Botticelli's works in the Uffizi Gallery, and Michelangelo's David. The city's blend of art, architecture, and finance reshaped Europe, turning Florence into a crucible of creativity and intellectual revival. Wien's displacement law, formulated by Wilhelm Wien in 1893, states that the peak wavelength of blackbody radiation is inversely proportional to temperature. Hotter objects radiate at shorter wavelengths, explaining why flames glow red, then white, and stars range from red dwarfs to blue giants. Temperature in physics reveals its color. The de Broglie hypothesis, introduced in 1924 by French physicist Louis de Broglie, proposed that particles like electrons have wave-like properties. His idea was confirmed by electron diffraction experiments and became central to quantum mechanics. De Broglie's insight blurred the boundary between matter and waves, reshaping physics in the 20th century. St. Petersburg, founded by Peter the Great in 1703, was built as Russia's window to Europe. It served as the imperial capital for over 200 years, featuring Baroque palaces, neoclassical avenues, and canals. Later renamed Petrograd and Leningrad, it remains one of Russia's cultural centers, famed for the Hermitage and the Mariinsky Theater. Compton scattering, discovered by Arthur Compton in 1923, describes how photons scatter inelastically off electrons, transferring energy and changing wavelength. The effect confirmed that light behaves like particles as well as waves. Compton's work earned a Nobel Prize, reinforcing quantum theory's challenge to classical ideas of radiation. The photoelectric effect, first explained by Albert Einstein in 1905, occurs when light shining on a material ejects electrons. Its discovery confirmed that light behaves as discrete quanta, or photons. The effect laid the groundwork for quantum mechanics and modern technologies like solar panels and photosensors, winning Einstein the Nobel Prize. Prague, capital of the Czech Republic, is famed for its Gothic, Baroque, and Romanesque architecture. Highlights include the Old Town Square, the Charles Bridge, and Prague Castle, the world's largest ancient castle complex. Nicknamed the City of 100 Spires, it has been a cultural crossroads in Europe for over a millennium. Rutherford scattering, discovered by Ernest Rutherford in 1911, describes how charged particles, like alpha particles, scatter elastically when deflected by atomic nuclei through Coulomb forces. His gold foil experiment revealed that atoms are mostly empty space with a dense central nucleus. This finding overturned the plum pudding model and reshaped atomic theory. Vienna, once the capital of the Habsburg Empire, became a hub of politics, music, and culture in Europe. Its imperial palaces, like Schönbrunn and the Hofburg, reflect centuries of grandeur. Home to Mozart, Beethoven, and Strauss, the city also pioneered cafe culture, turning coffee houses into centers of intellectual life. The Zeeman effect, discovered by Peter Zeeman in 1896, is the splitting of spectral lines into multiple components when atoms are placed in a magnetic field. The effect provided crucial crucial evidence for electron behavior and quantum theory. Today, it's used in astrophysics to measure magnetic fields in distant stars and galaxies. The Stark effect, named after Johannes Stark, who discovered it in 1913, is the shifting or splitting of atomic and molecular spectral lines under an external electric field. It provided experimental support for early quantum models. The principle is widely applied in spectroscopy and plasma physics to analyze atomic structures. Budapest, the capital of Hungary and the Pearl of the Danube, combines Buda's historic hills with Pest's vibrant boulevards. Known for its thermal baths, neo-Gothic parliament, and grand bridges, the city flourished under Austro-Hungarian rule. Today, it remains a cultural crossroads, blending Ottoman, Baroque, and modern European influences. Fencing, rooted in European dueling traditions, is a modern combat sport featuring 3 weapons: foil, épée, and saber. Governed by precise rules and electronic scoring, it emphasizes speed, reflexes, and strategy. Olympic since 1896, fencing blends martial skill with athletic precision, turning swordplay into a discipline of controlled elegance. Amsterdam, capital of the Netherlands, is renowned for its canals, 17th century gabled houses, and artistic heritage. Once a major trading hub of the Dutch Golden Age, it nurtured painters like Rembrandt and Vermeer. Today, it balances historic charm with modern vibrancy, cycling culture, and an enduring reputation as the Venice of the North. The Lamb shift, discovered by Willis Lamb in 1947, is a small difference in energy between the two S1/2 and two P1/2 states of hydrogen. This subtle effect, caused by quantum electrodynamics and vacuum fluctuations, confirmed that empty space is not truly empty. Lamb's work earned a Nobel Prize and reshaped atomic physics. We started this video chasing curiosity without a plan, and 183 facts later, I hope you're leaving with more wonder than you came with. If you enjoyed the journey, stay connected by liking, subscribing, and joining me again for the next round of useless knowledge worth remembering.
Every corner of history, science, and human thought hides something fascinating, small details that change how we see the world. I'm Useless Guy, your dedicated fact finder, here to uncover those quiet yet incredible facts that stick with you long after you hear them. The Doppler effect explains why a passing ambulance's siren suddenly drops in pitch as it moves away. It's all about how sound waves bunch up or spread out depending on motion. When the source comes closer, waves compress and sound higher. When it leaves, they stretch and sound lower. The same principle helps astronomers detect stars and galaxies moving across space. The bandwagon effect is what happens when people follow a crowd just because everyone else seems to. Imagine suddenly liking a song you hated yesterday, right after it went viral. Psychologists use this term to explain how opinions and behaviors spread socially, from fashion trends to political movements, even when personal beliefs take a back seat. An axion is a tiny particle that physicists haven't yet seen but really hope exists. It was proposed in 1977 to fix a strange imbalance in the equations describing the strong nuclear force. If it's real, it could also explain dark matter, that invisible stuff making up most of the universe. In short, the axion might solve 2 cosmic mysteries at once. The false consensus effect is our brain's sneaky way of assuming everyone else thinks like us. For example, if you love pineapple on pizza, you might believe most people secretly agree, even when they clearly don't. Psychologists say this bias helps us feel more normal, but it also blinds us to how different others truly are. The Stroop effect is that mental slowdown you feel when the word blue is written in red ink. Your brain tries to read and recognize color at the same time, and those 2 tasks interfere. This simple test, created in the 1930s, is still used in psychology labs today to study attention, reaction time, and cognitive control. The oldest known surgical text, the Edwin Smith Papyrus, comes from ancient Egypt around 1600 BCE. It's a fascinating manual describing 48 trauma cases, from broken bones to head injuries, all written with calm, logical reasoning instead of magic spells. For its time, that made it astonishingly scientific, especially when most healing relied on superstition. Blombos Cave sits quietly along South Africa's southern coast, about 300 kilometers east of Cape Town, but it holds astonishing secrets. Archaeologists have found ochre engravings, shell beads, and bone tools dating back 75,000 years. It's one of the earliest places showing humans making art, proof that creativity runs deep in our species. A sky burial in Tibet looks both shocking and spiritual to outsiders. Instead of burying or burning the dead, Tibetans place the body atop a mountain for vultures to consume. In their view, the body is just a vessel, and feeding it back to nature is an act of compassion. It's recycling, but on a sacred cosmic scale. Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, is one of Europe's oldest continually inhabited cities. Sitting where the Sava and Danube rivers meet, it's seen empires rise and fall, from Romans to Ottomans. Even its name means White City. Today, you can still find fortresses, cobbled streets, and layers of history stacked like geological time. The spolia opima were ancient Rome's highest military honor, but incredibly rare. To earn it, a Roman general had to personally kill an enemy commander in single combat and take his armor. It happened only 3 times in history, which makes it the ancient equivalent of winning the Olympics, a duel, and the presidency all at once. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch ran experiments that revealed just how easily people conform. Participants had to match line lengths on a card, but when others deliberately gave wrong answers, many followed along anyway. It showed that social pressure can override logic. Our need to fit in is stronger than we like to admit. A macho, short for massive astrophysical compact halo object, sounds like a cosmic superhero, but it's actually a possible explanation for dark matter. These could be black holes, neutron stars, or other dense remnants lurking in galaxy halos. Astronomers once hoped MACHOS filled the universe's missing mass, though evidence now suggests otherwise. Ideasthesia is a mind-bending concept where ideas trigger sensory experiences. For instance, someone might feel the shape of a number or taste a concept. It's not the same as synesthesia, where senses mix. Here, meaning itself sparks perception. Researchers believe it hints at how deeply language and sensation intertwine in the brain. The fool's mate in chess is brutal, and over in 2 moves. It happens when one player opens recklessly, leaving their king exposed. The opponent simply lines up the queen and bishop for a lightning checkmate. It's rare among real players, but a favorite example for teachers explaining why defense matters more than flashy openings. Temperature-dependent sex determination sounds like science fiction, but it's real biology for many reptiles. In species like turtles or crocodiles, whether an egg becomes male or female depends on how warm it was during incubation. Just a few degrees difference can flip the outcome, as if the weather itself decides who hatches next. The Lewis-Mogridge position is an oddly frustrating observation in urban planning. Building more roads doesn't fix traffic. It invites more of it. As new lanes appear, more drivers take to the streets until congestion returns. It's like loosening your belt to solve overeating, comfortable for a moment, but the problem soon fills the space again. Quantum field theory is physics's big unifying script for how particles behave. Instead of treating particles as little dots, it sees them as ripples in invisible fields filling the universe. Every interaction, from light to gravity, plays out as vibrations in these fields. It's the math behind everything, from lasers to black holes. The KPG extinction event around 66 million years ago wiped out nearly 3/4 of life on Earth. Scientists link it to a massive asteroid impact near today's Yucatan Peninsula, which left the Chicxulub crater. The fallout darkened skies and cooled the planet. When it cleared, dinosaurs were gone, paving the way for mammals to rise. The Sumerian language is humanity's first known written tongue. It appeared in Mesopotamia over 5,000 years ago, carved into clay tablets with wedge-shaped symbols called cuneiform. Strangely, it's a language isolate, meaning it has no known relatives. That makes it a linguistic orphan, ancient, brilliant, and entirely alone in history. A Sonnenrad, or sun wheel, is an ancient circular symbol resembling a swastika found in several Indo-European cultures. It originally represented cycles of the sun or a time. Sadly, in modern times, extremist groups have co-opted it as a hate symbol, twisting its ancient meaning much like they did with the traditional swastika. Politeness theory explores how people carefully protect each other's social face. Every conversation is a balancing act, saying enough to be honest, but not so much that someone feels embarrassed. For example, when we soften criticism with phrases like maybe consider, we're managing politeness. It's essentially the science of not stepping on toes. The Roman legal principle of res judicata might sound fancy, but it's basically the rule that says you can't try the same case twice. Once a court has made a final decision between 2 parties, That's it. No do-overs. It's one of the oldest ideas in law, designed to keep verdicts final and prevent endless cycles of litigation. The Saimaa ringed seal is a remarkable survivor, and one of Earth's rarest. Found only in Finland's Lake Saimaa, this seal has been cut off from the sea since the last ice age. Over time, it adapted to freshwater life, becoming its own subspecies. Today, fewer than 400 remain, making it a fragile reminder of ancient climates. Knossos, on the island of Crete, is often called Europe's oldest city. It flourished during the Bronze Age as the heart of the Minoan civilization, around 2000 BCE. The site features sprawling palaces, intricate frescoes, and even what might be the world's first plumbing system. Legend links it to King Minos and the mythical labyrinth. The Amistad case of 1841 began with a mutiny on a Spanish slave ship. African captives seized control, but were later captured off the U.S. coast. Their fate reached the Supreme Court, where, in a landmark decision, the justices ruled in their favor, declaring them free men who had been illegally enslaved. The narrative paradigm is a theory that says humans are born storytellers. Instead of judging messages by logic alone, we're more persuaded by a story that feels true. That's why myths, movies, and even political speeches stick. They use structure, emotion, and character. In communication, a good story can outshine even a perfect argument. The Debye-Huckel equation sounds intimidating, but it's chemistry's way of handling reality. In dilute solutions, ions don't behave ideally. Their electric fields mess with each other. This equation, developed in the 1920s, corrects for that, letting scientists calculate how active an ion really is. Its precision hiding behind math. Twyman's law is the scientific equivalent of too good to be true. It says any data that looks surprising or unusually interesting is probably wrong. Statisticians treat it as a friendly warning. Double-check the numbers before celebrating. In other words, if your graph suddenly looks amazing, chances are your spreadsheet doesn't agree. A cold trap is a clever little gadget used in vacuum systems. It cools vapors so intensely that they condense into liquid or solid form, trapping unwanted gases before they reach sensitive equipment. Think of it as a molecular bouncer, stopping contaminants at the door so experiments or instruments stay pristine. The Zeeman effect happens when light interacts with a magnetic field and splits into several spectral lines. Discovered by Peter Zeeman in 1896, it showed that magnetism could actually change atomic energy levels. This tiny shift gave physicists a powerful new tool to study the structure of atoms and the behavior of stars. Franchi Cave in Greece holds an unbroken record of human life spanning tens of thousands of years. From Paleolithic hunters to early farmers, people continuously lived there until around 3000 BCE. Archaeologists have uncovered tools, shells, and even ancient burials, making it one of the most complete time capsules in Europe. Valletta, the capital of Malta, was built like a fortress by the Knights of St. John in the 1500s. Perched on a rocky peninsula, its massive stone walls and narrow streets were designed for defense and beauty. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where Baroque architecture meets a long legacy of resilience. The Tetris effect is when a game or activity takes over your brain. After hours of stacking falling blocks, you might start seeing shapes everywhere, even in your dreams. Psychologists use the term for any repetitive task that imprints on the mind. It's harmless, though slightly unsettling, like having your thoughts stuck in replay mode. Gatekeeping describes how information gets filtered before reaching the public. Journalists, editors, and even algorithms decide what gets published or ignored. The idea dates back to mid-20th century communication studies, but today it also applies to social media feeds. In a sense, every trending topic has already passed through invisible gates. Silver tarnish might look like rust, but chemistry tells a different story. The metal reacts not with oxygen, but with tiny traces of sulfur in the air. Over time, it forms black silver sulfide, that dull coating you see on old jewelry or utensils. A gentle polish reverses it, restoring the bright, mirror-like shine. The Galenic system of medicine dominated Europe for over 13 centuries. Based on the teachings of the Roman physician Galen, it proposed that health depended on balancing 4 bodily humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Treatments like bloodletting and herbal tonics aimed to restore harmony centuries before modern biology arrived. The wolf bone, discovered in 1937 in Vestanis, what is now the Czech Republic, is one of the oldest known artifacts linked to early counting. Marked with a series of carved notches, it may have been used to track days or hunts. It's a small piece of bone, but possibly humanity's first calendar. Trial by ordeal was a medieval way of letting fate decide guilt. Accused persons might hold a red-hot iron, plunge their hand into boiling water, or be thrown into a river. If they survived unharmed, they were deemed innocent. It sounds barbaric now, but at the time, divine intervention was considered the ultimate judge. The Milgram experiment, conducted in the early 1960s, tested how far people would go in obeying authority. Volunteers thought they were shocking others for wrong answers, while an experimenter urged them to continue. Many did, even when they believed they were causing pain. It revealed how obedience can override conscience. Fundamental interactions are nature's basic forces: gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. Everything in the universe, from falling apples to atomic decay, can be traced to these four. Scientists have tried linking them into one grand theory of everything, but so far the universe keeps some secrets. Spheres of influence describe how powerful nations extend control without direct rule. During the 19th century, for example, European empires carved up Asia and Africa into informal zones of economic or political dominance. It's like drawing invisible borders of power. Influence without ownership, but just as consequential. The chronology protection conjecture is a theory proposed by physicist Stephen Hawking, suggesting that nature forbids time travel. The idea is that the laws of physics somehow prevent closed time loops from forming. In essence, it's the universe's way of saying no paradoxes allowed. Convenient, and maybe merciful. The Battle of Agincourt, fought on October 25, 1415, was one of England's most famous victories in the 100 Years' War. King Henry V's army, vastly outnumbered, used muddy terrain and longbowmen to devastating effect. The French suffered enormous losses, and the English triumph became legend, even immortalized by Shakespeare. The Raman effect, discovered by Indian physicist C.V. Raman in 1928, occurs when light scatters off molecules and changes energy slightly. This shift reveals the molecule's structure, like a spectral fingerprint. The discovery earned Raman a Nobel Prize and opened the door to techniques that scientists still use to study materials today. Dixon's Q-test is a simple but handy statistical tool used to spot outliers in small datasets. Imagine you've measured something 5 times and one number looks suspiciously off. This test helps decide if it's genuinely different or just random variation. Developed by W.J. Dixon in the mid-20th century, it keeps data analysis clean and fair. The Library of Babel is a short story by Jorge Luis Borges that imagines an infinite library containing every possible 410-page book. Most are gibberish, but somewhere inside lies every truth lie and variation of human thought. It's both fascinating and terrifying, a metaphor for infinity, randomness, and our endless search for meaning. Pinnacle Point is a rocky headland on South Africa's southern coast, overlooking the Indian Ocean. Archaeologists have found evidence there of early humans using fire, collecting shellfish, and crafting tools around 164,000 years ago. It's one of the earliest known sites showing coastal living, proof that our ancestors already understood the sea's resources. The Cyrillic script, which today serves languages like Russian and Bulgarian, was created in the 10th century in the First Bulgarian Empire. Scholars at the Preslav Literary School developed it to spread Christian texts in the local Slavic tongue. Over time, it evolved into dozens of alphabets, shaping written culture across Eastern Europe and beyond. The Strange Situation was a groundbreaking experiment by psychologist Mary Ainsworth in the 1970s. It observed how young children reacted when briefly separated from and reunited with their caregivers. The study revealed different attachment styles, from secure to anxious or avoidant, and helped define modern understanding of emotional bonds in early life. The American Civil War, fought from 1861 to 1865, divided the United States between the Union and the Confederacy. The conflict centered on slavery and states' rights, leaving over 600,000 dead. It ended with the Union's victory and the abolition of slavery, reshaping the nation's laws, economy, and moral foundation. Bucharest, Romania's capital, blends old-world charm with modern bustle. Its broad boulevards and Belle Epoque architecture once earned it the nickname Little Paris. Though much was damaged during wars and earthquakes, landmarks like the Palace of the Parliament and the historic Lipskenny district still echo centuries of cultural resilience. In microbiology, quorum sensing is how bacteria talk to each other. Through tiny chemical signals, they detect population density and coordinate collective actions, like forming biofilms or releasing toxins. It's essentially microbial teamwork. Once enough cells agree, they act together, showing that even single-celled organisms thrive on communication. The pitch drop experiment is science's slowest spectacle. Started in 1927 at the University of Queensland, it tracks how a lump of tar, which looks solid, slowly drips through a funnel. In nearly a century, only 10 drops have fallen. It's a quiet but powerful lesson in patience and the hidden flow of matter. Taekwondo, born in Korea, is a martial art that looks like choreography in motion. It emphasizes high spinning and jumping kicks, fast, precise, and powerful. Developed in the mid-20th century from older Korean and Japanese styles, it's now an Olympic sport that mixes discipline, balance, and explosive athleticism. A petroglyph is ancient art carved directly into rock. Early humans used tools to chip or scratch figures, animals, symbols, or scenes onto stone surfaces. Found across continents, from North America to Australia, they form one of humanity's earliest storytelling mediums, a permanent record etched into the planet itself. The Khmer script, used for Cambodia's national language, has one of the world's longest alphabets, 74 characters in total. Developed from ancient Brahmi scripts of India, it includes consonants, vowels, and intricate diacritics. Its ornate curves make it both visually striking and complex to master, a blend of language and artistry. The Peace of Westphalia, signed in 1648, ended Europe's devastating 30 Years' War. The treaties not only brought peace, but also introduced the modern idea of national sovereignty, that each state governs itself without external interference. It quietly reshaped global politics, laying the groundwork for today's system of independent nations. The ecliptic is the flat plane of Earth's orbit around the Sun, and the path the Sun appears to trace across our sky. Most planets orbit close to this same plane, which is why they seem to follow similar paths in the night sky. Astronomers use it as a cosmic reference line for mapping the heavens. A dead-hand provision in a will lets someone control property long after death, sometimes for generations. It might dictate who inherits, when, or under what conditions. While legal, such clauses can be controversial, as they let the deceased influence the living, a bit like ghostly micromanagement through paperwork. The spice trade of the 17th century was so valuable that entire empires gambled over nutmeg and cloves. In 1667, the Dutch even traded the island of Manhattan to the English for Run, a tiny island rich in nutmeg. For a time, that little speck of land was worth more than New York itself. In the 16th century, Emperor Rudolph II of the Holy Roman Empire filled his Prague palace with wonders, a cabinet of curiosities. It held paintings, animal specimens, mechanical inventions, and even alchemical tools. Part museum, part laboratory. It mirrored the Renaissance spirit, where art, science, and magic blurred into one pursuit of knowledge. The Battle of Cannae, in 216 BCE, remains one of history's greatest tactical victories. Carthaginian General Hannibal surrounded a much larger Roman army in southern Italy, annihilating it through clever maneuvers. His double envelopment strategy is still studied in military academies today as the textbook example of battlefield brilliance. The Kardashev scale measures a civilization's technological progress by how much energy it can harness. Type 1. Civilizations use all energy available on their planet. Type 2. Capture their star's power. And Type 3. Control energy on a galactic scale. Humanity, for reference, isn't even a full Type 1 yet. Ljubljana, Slovenia's capital, feels like a fairy tale city. Its leafy riverbanks, green spaces, and dragon-themed bridges make it uniquely charming. The Ljubljanica River winds through Baroque and modernist architecture, giving the city both elegance and warmth. It's small but deeply livable, a hidden gem in the heart of Europe. The Cobra effect describes when a solution backfires spectacularly. The name comes from colonial India, where authorities offered rewards for every dead cobra. People began breeding cobras to collect bounties, and when the policy ended, they released them, increasing the problem. It's a classic case of good intentions gone wrong. In 1984, the city of Bhopal in India faced one of the darkest nights in industrial history. A pesticide plant leaked methyl isocyanate gas into the air, killing thousands within hours and injuring many more. The invisible cloud spread through the sleeping city, making the Bhopal disaster the world's worst industrial accident and a lasting reminder of corporate negligence. The Stanford prison experiment in 1971 wasn't a movie, it was real psychology. Philip Zimbardo created a mock prison with college students playing guards and prisoners. Within days, the guards became cruel, and the prisoners broke down emotionally. It showed just how easily ordinary people can abuse power when given authority, even in a fake setting. Arson isn't just about lighting a fire, it's about intent. It's the deliberate act of setting property on fire, often for revenge, insurance money, or destruction. From medieval laws to modern forensics, arson has always been treated as a serious crime because it doesn't just destroy things. It endangers lives, communities, and history itself. Occam's razor is like the keep it simple rule for science and logic. It says that when two explanations fit the facts, the simpler one is usually better. Astronomers, doctors, and detectives all use it. Because while wild theories sound fun, truth usually hides in the least complicated answer. Forensic soil analysis sounds boring until you realize dirt can solve crimes. Every patch of ground has a unique mix of minerals, microbes, and even pollen. Investigators can match soil on a shoe or tire to a specific place, almost like a fingerprint from the earth itself, tiny grains that tell huge stories. A kermit is what happens when ceramics and metals join forces. The ceramic gives hardness and heat resistance, while the metal adds toughness and flexibility. You'll find cermets in jet engines, armor, and even dental tools. It's basically teamwork at the atomic level, where opposites make something stronger together. Far beyond Neptune lies the Kuiper Belt, a massive ring of icy bodies orbiting the Sun. It's home to dwarf planets like Pluto and Eris, leftovers from the solar system's formation. Think of it as a cosmic attic, storing the ancient frozen remains of our solar neighborhood for billions of years. Hofstadter's law is the universe's way of saying, you're not as fast as you think. It claims that every task takes longer than expected, even when you account for that delay. Created by Douglas Hofstadter, it's a clever reminder that time underestimation isn't a bug in human planning, it's practically a feature. The uses and gratifications theory flips the script on how we see media. Instead of media controlling us, it says people actively choose what they watch, read, or play to meet their needs, like entertainment, information, or connection. It's why someone might pick a horror movie after a bad day. Sometimes fear feels oddly satisfying. Intercall, invented in 1972, might be the weirdest programming language ever. It was designed as a parody, making coding intentionally painful. To get a program to run, you literally had to type, please. It's a joke wrapped in syntax, a reminder that even programmers have a sense of humor. Sometimes, a very dark one. A quasi-crystal looks ordered like a crystal, but never quite repeats itself. Imagine tiles arranged in a perfect pattern that never loops. It's both beautiful and mathematically strange. Discovered in 1982, quasi-crystals blur the line between chaos and order, proving nature doesn't always follow our neat geometric rules. A tachyon is a particle that physics textbooks whisper about, but have never seen. It's hypothetical, said to always move faster than light. If it existed, it would break causality. Events could happen before their causes. That's not just confusing. It's the kind of thing that makes physicists sigh and reach for more coffee. The crystal system is how scientists organize all the ways atoms can arrange themselves in solids. From cubes to hexagons, there are 7 main systems, like architectural blueprints for matter. Whether it's salt crystals, quartz, or diamonds, their beauty and strength depend entirely on this invisible geometry. The Hartle-Hawking state sounds mysterious because it is. Proposed by physicists James Hartle and Stephen Hawking, it suggests that before the Big Bang, time itself didn't exist. There was no before. The universe simply emerged smoothly, like a hill rolling into a valley without a sharp beginning or a creator's spark. The 100 Years' War wasn't just one endless battle. It was a tangled series of conflicts between England and France from 1337 to 1453. It birthed legends like Joan of Arc, reshaped medieval Europe, and proved that crowns and borders could cost generations of blood and loyalty. The Sacher-Tetrode equation sounds like a tongue twister, but it's actually physics poetry. It calculates the entropy, or disorder, of an ideal gas made of single atoms. By blending thermodynamics and quantum theory, it gives numbers to chaos itself, turning randomness into something you can measure. Onomatopoeia is when language imitates sound, like buzz, crash, or sizzle. It's how words echo life. Ancient poets loved them. Comic books still rely on them. And even animals understand tone over meaning. It's language doing its best impression of the world it describes. The Sino-Indian War of 1962 was short but fierce. Fought high in the freezing Himalayas, it pitted China against India over disputed borders. Soldiers battled at altitudes where oxygen was scarce and survival was as tough as the terrain itself, a reminder that geography often shapes history. The Meissner effect is what makes superconductors seem like magic. When certain materials cool to near absolute zero, they expel magnetic fields completely. That's why magnets can float above them, locked in invisible balance. It's physics showing off its party tricks in the lab. Every summer, the River Thames hosts one of Britain's most curious traditions: swan upping. The monarch's swan marker and his team row up the river counting and tagging swans. It's part wildlife census, part royal ceremony, and entirely unique, proof that even bird counting can wear a crown. Gibbs's phase rule is like a mathematical recipe for matter. It tells you how many things you can change in a system, like temperature or pressure, before it stops being stable. It's the quiet law behind everything from boiling water to steel making, keeping chaos in scientific check. The Klazies River Caves in South Africa are like a diary written in stone. Inside, archaeologists found some of the earliest evidence of modern humans: tools, bones, and traces of ancient fires. Dating back more than 100,000 years, they tell stories of people who shaped the world long before history began. Phantom energy sounds like science fiction, but it's real cosmological speculation. It's a form of dark energy so intense it could eventually tear the universe apart, stretching galaxies until atoms themselves rip. If it exists, the cosmos has a built-in expiration date, a quiet, unstoppable unraveling. Quantum foam is what physicists think space-time looks like up close: wild, restless, and bubbling with energy. At unimaginably tiny scales, space isn't smooth, but constantly fluctuating. It's as if the universe itself fizzes like soda even when it seems perfectly still. A sand battery is exactly what it sounds like: a giant thermal battery made of sand. Heated by electricity, it stores energy for months as warmth, ready to power buildings in winter. It's low-cost, sustainable, and surprisingly effective, like turning a beach into a giant thermos. The Tadjart Akakis Mountains in Libya look like Mars, but tell Earth's ancient story. Covered in rock art dating back thousands of years, the region once had rivers and animals. Today, it's desert, but its walls still whisper about the time when the Sahara was green. Toki Pona isn't just a language, it's a philosophy. Created in 2001, it uses barely 100 root words to express everything. It forces speakers to simplify thoughts, seeing life through clarity instead of complexity. It's minimalism turned linguistic, where fewer words mean deeper meaning. The framing effect shows how our choices depend on wording. Say a treatment saves 90% of patients, and people cheer. But say it kills 10% and fear takes over. The facts don't change, just the frame. Our minds, it seems, edit reality like overzealous film directors. In ancient Greece, a stoa was a long, shaded walkway where people gathered to talk, trade, or think. Philosophers like Zeno taught there, giving rise to Stoicism. It was part marketplace, part classroom, and proof that some of history's biggest ideas started under a simple roof. The Ge'ez script from Ethiopia and Eritrea looks like art, but functions with precision. Each symbol represents a consonant-vowel pair, making it an abugida. It's been used for centuries in liturgy, history, and daily life, a script that bridges sound, faith, and identity. In superconductivity, the proximity effect happens when a superconductor touches a normal material, and some of its super properties leak over. It's like a chill friend calming everyone nearby. Electrons in the non-superconductor start pairing up slightly, too. This boundary behavior helps scientists design advanced circuits and quantum devices that mix both materials seamlessly. The casket letters were a set of 8 letters and a few sonnets said to be written by Mary Queen of Scots in the 1500s. They allegedly revealed her involvement in her husband's murder. Whether real or forged, they became political weapons, words powerful enough to decide a queen's fate. A script isn't just words on paper, it's a mental plan for behavior. It's what makes you automatically greet someone with hi or sit facing the front in class. Psychologists use scripts to explain how we act out familiar social routines, like actors following lines we've rehearsed since childhood. The structure factor sounds abstract, but it's the key to seeing how atoms are arranged. When scientists shine X-rays or electrons on a crystal, this mathematical pattern shows how waves scatter. From it, we can build detailed 3D models of materials, turning invisible atoms into visible structures. Aboriginal rock art in Australia is more than ancient decoration. It's storytelling in stone. Created over tens of thousands of years, these paintings and carvings show hunting scenes, spirits, and maps of the land. They connect generations, keeping history, spirituality, and landscape bound together in color and rock. A boustrophodon is writing that zigzags like a plowing ox. One line runs left to right, the next right to left. Ancient Greek inscriptions often used it to save space on stone. Reading it feels like tracing a maze, a rare moment when writing literally takes a turn. Dramatism, created by Kenneth Burke, views human life as theater. It suggests every action, every argument, speech, or apology has a scene, actors, motives, and purpose. By analyzing life as drama, it turns communication into a script where meaning depends on the roles we play. The Ginsburg-Landau theory explains superconductivity with elegant math. It treats the phenomenon like a smooth transition, similar to water freezing into ice, where electrons move in perfect harmony. Though simplified, this theory bridges microscopic physics and large-scale behavior, making the invisible flow of zero-resistance current understandable. Between 1400 and 1700, English pronunciation went through the Great Vowel Shift, a massive linguistic makeover. Words like bite and meat once sounded like beat and mate. It's why English spelling feels chaotic today. Our letters froze while our voices evolved. Magnonics sounds futuristic, and it is. It studies waves that travel through a material's magnetic spins instead of electric current. These spin waves could one day power ultra-efficient computers, carrying information with almost no energy loss, like Wi-Fi made of magnetism. Ullage is that little empty space you see in a wine bottle or fuel tank. It's not laziness, it's science. Liquids expand when heated, so the gap prevents bursting or spillage. In wine, ullage even signals age, as evaporation slowly changes the drink's flavor over time. Uruk, an ancient Mesopotamian city, might have invented mass production of bowls. Around 3300 BCE, workers received rations in identical beveled-rim clay bowls, made by the thousands. These humble containers mark one of humanity's earliest steps toward organized economies and mass industry. The Xhosa language clicks are a marvel of sound. These clicks, called post-alveolar clicks, are made by pressing the tongue against the upper gum ridge. They create sharp, rhythmic tones that shape entire words, turning conversation into something that feels half speech, half percussion. Samarkand in Uzbekistan once shone as a jewel of the Silk Road. Merchants traded silk, spices, and stories there, but its prized export was paper, so fine that scholars across the Islamic world sought it. Its legacy still lingers in the blue domes and intricate mosaics that line its streets. Mise on a beam is art folding in on itself, an image inside an image. Think of a painting showing another painting, or a movie showing someone watching a movie. It's visual recursion, turning art into a hall of mirrors where meaning deepens the longer you look. The Great Recoinage of 1696 was England's massive coin cleanup. Silver coins had been clipped and counterfeited so badly that Isaac Newton, then master of the mint, stepped in. Using precise weights and new milling techniques, he restored trust in money and helped shape modern currency standards. Haptic technology brings touch to machines. The buzz in your phone or controller comes from tiny rotating motors that mimic real sensations. From virtual surgery tools to gaming gloves, haptics bridges digital and physical worlds, letting us feel code as vibration and motion. Sumptuary laws in Renaissance Italy told people what they could wear or own based on class. Gold embroidery, silk, or certain foods were privileges of the elite. It wasn't just fashion policing. It was a social hierarchy stitched directly into fabric and furniture. The truce of God was the medieval church's attempt to calm constant feudal warfare. It banned fighting on holy days and seasons like Lent. For centuries, it forced knights to pause their battles, proving even power-hungry nobles had to answer to divine scheduling. Spintronics takes electronics to a new level by using the electron's spin as well as its charge. It's how some modern memory devices work, tiny magnetic twists instead of moving currents. Faster, smaller, and cooler, spintronics might drive the next generation of computing. Pyrite, known as fool's gold, can grow into perfect golden cubes entirely on its own. No carving, no polishing, just nature's geometry at work. Found in mines and rock layers worldwide, its metallic shimmer has tricked countless treasure hunters for centuries. The von Neumann-Morgenstern utility theorem sounds intimidating, but it's about decision-making under risk. It says rational people choose the option that maximizes their expected utility, not just profit. In other words, we gamble not for gain alone, but for how that gain feels. Mathematics meeting human psychology. The availability heuristic is like the brain's shortcut button. When we make decisions, instead of digging for all the data, we just grab the first example that pops into our head. If you recently heard about a plane crash, you might think flying is dangerous, even though it's statistically safer than driving. Our brains love what's easy to recall, not what's accurate. The straw man argument is when someone pretends to defeat an opponent's point, but they've secretly changed it first. It's like arguing with a scarecrow version of the real idea. Instead of debating what was actually said, they simplify or twist it, knock it down, and act like they've won. It's easy, dramatic, and completely misleading. The Z-pinch is a way to trap plasma, the same stuff stars are made of, using electricity alone. When an electric current runs through plasma, it creates a magnetic field that squeezes it inward, like an invisible fist. Scientists study this for fusion energy, because if we can control plasma this way, we could mimic the power of the sun on Earth. The Allais paradox, created by Maurice Allais in 1953, shows how people often make choices that don't follow logic. When faced with gambling-style options, people pick what feels right, not what maximizes their gain. It's a reminder that even with math and probability on the table, human intuition often plays by its own rules. Agreeable is one of those tiny details added to spaceship models in sci-fi movies that make them look realistic. Think of the bumps and ridges on the Death Star. They don't do anything, but they make it look complex. The trick works because the human eye loves patterns and clutter that suggest technology, even when it's just decoration. Conway's law says that the way a team communicates shapes what they build. If an organization is divided into 4 departments, it'll probably make a product with 4 main parts. It's a funny truth in tech. Your app, your website, or even your space rocket often ends up reflecting how your team talks behind the scenes. Japan's Icy Grand Shrine has a tradition unlike any other. It's completely rebuilt every 20 years. This Shinto ritual, called Shikinen Sengu, has been going on for over 1,300 years. The idea isn't to preserve old wood, but to preserve skill and spirit, passing craftsmanship from one generation to the next like a living memory. A holler is a poetic trick, where 2 whole lines sound exactly the same but mean different things. It's like hearing an echo that changes meaning on reflection, because it demands perfect rhythm and double interpretation. Poets rarely pull it off, but when they do, it's linguistic magic, hiding in plain sound. An alloy is what you get when you mix metals to create something stronger or more useful. Bronze, for example, is copper plus tin, an ancient recipe that gave early civilizations tougher tools and weapons. Today, alloys make up everything from airplane wings to guitar strings, proving that teamwork works even in metals. The Boxer Rebellion was a violent uprising in China between 1899 and 1901, aimed at pushing out foreign powers and missionaries. The Boxers, named for their martial arts, believed they could resist bullets through spiritual strength. It ended brutally, but it showed China's deep frustration with colonial influence and cultural invasion. The zone of avoidance is a part of the sky astronomers can't fully see, because our own Milky Way gets in the way. Dust, stars, and gas clouds block telescopes from viewing what's behind it. It's like trying to spot something across a smoky concert hall. The universe hides a few secrets right behind our own stage lights. The Vlasov equation describes how a plasma, a cloud of charged particles, moves and changes over time without collisions. It's used in space physics to model things like solar winds and magnetic storms. Imagine tracking the flow of invisible rivers of energy around planets. This equation is what helps scientists do exactly that. M-theory is physics' ambitious attempt to tie together all 5 versions of string theory. It suggests that everything in the universe, from atoms to galaxies, is made of tiny vibrating strings. And even more strangely, that there are 11 dimensions. It's a grand unifying dream, though it's still more math than experiment for now. A stacking fault happens when the atomic layers in a crystal slip out of order. Think of a neatly stacked deck of cards where one layer shifts slightly. Suddenly, the whole structure isn't perfect anymore. These tiny misalignments affect how metals bend, break, and even conduct electricity on a microscopic scale. The bristles of a plastic broom are often flagged. Their tips are split into tiny strands. It's not damage, it's design. Those little splits grab dust and crumbs more efficiently by increasing surface area. It's the same idea as using a fine brush instead of a thick one. More contact, cleaner sweep, less effort. Berlow's SMCR model breaks communication into 4 parts: source, message, channel, and receiver. The source sends an idea. The message carries it. The channel delivers it, like sound or text, and the receiver decodes it. It's simple, but powerful, showing how even a text or tweet is a full mini communication system. Barnlund's transactional model views communication as a two-way dance instead of a one-way street. The sender and receiver keep switching roles, constantly giving feedback through words, tone, or even silence. It's how real conversations work, messy, circular, and always changing depending on how each person responds. Wadras Prison in Barcelona is one of the few all-female prisons in Europe with a progressive design. It includes nurseries and spaces where mothers can raise their babies while serving time. Rather than just punishment, it focuses on rehabilitation and human dignity, a rare approach in the world of incarceration. Causal dynamical triangulation is a theory that tries to describe space-time as a collection of tiny triangles stitched together. Instead of assuming space already exists, it builds it piece by piece, like assembling a cosmic quilt. It's one of the few ways physicists are trying to make quantum gravity make mathematical sense. The Paleo-Hebrew alphabet was the ancient script used by the Israelites before the Babylonian exile. Afterward, it was mostly replaced by the Aramaic-based square script used in modern Hebrew today. Seeing both side by side is like comparing old cursive handwriting to digital text. Same language, different look through history. The Chandrasekhar limit is the maximum mass, about 1.4 times that of the Sun, that a white dwarf star can have before collapsing. Beyond that point, gravity wins, and the star can explode as a supernova or form a neutron star. It's the universe's built-in weight limit for dying stars. A quantum dot is a crystal so small it acts like an atom. Made from semiconductors, these nanocrystals trap electrons and emit vivid colors when light hits them. They're used in TVS, medical imaging, and solar cells, and they shine with such precision that a change of just a few atoms can shift their entire color. A self-fulfilling prophecy happens when believing something makes it come true. If a teacher expects a student to succeed, they might give extra encouragement, and the student, feeling confident, performs better. It's like a loop between thought and reality, where expectation quietly shapes outcome without anyone noticing. Minkowski space combines space and time into a single four-dimensional structure. In this model, events aren't just where they happen, but also when. It's the backbone of Einstein's relativity, showing that time can stretch or shrink depending on motion, like a flexible fabric holding the universe together. Social constructionism is the idea that much of what we call reality is built through shared belief. Money, nations, even gender roles exist because people agree they do. It's not saying reality is fake, it's saying meaning comes from collective understanding. The world, in this view, is part physical, part conversation. The Wars of the Roses were a brutal series of civil wars in 15th century England between two rival branches of the royal family, the Red Rose of Lancaster and the White Rose of York. They fought for control of the English throne, leading to decades of chaos, betrayal, and shifting power until the conflict ended with the rise of the Tudor dynasty. Syracuse is a historic coastal city on the island of Sicily, once one of the most powerful cities in the ancient Mediterranean. It was home to the famous mathematician Archimedes and has Greek temples, Roman amphitheaters, and medieval streets all layered together. Walking through it feels like traveling through 3,000 years of history in one afternoon. The third-person effect is a funny quirk of human psychology. It says we tend to think media messages, like ads or propaganda, affect other people more than they affect us. For example, we assume we're too smart for political manipulation, but everyone else might fall for it. It's a quiet illusion that makes us feel just a bit immune to influence. The full Windsor knot, that neat triangular tie knot often seen at formal events, isn't actually the invention of the Duke of Windsor. He just liked his ties thick and symmetrical, so tailors made them that way. The knot was named in his honor later, which means the most famous tie style in the world came from imitation, not innovation. The Booba Kiki effect shows that even nonsense words feel meaningful to us. When people hear Booba, they imagine something round and soft. Kiki, on the other hand, feels sharp and spiky. It's the same across cultures and languages, suggesting our brains naturally link sound and shape, almost as if words carry built-in emotions. Was one of the great Sumerian city-states of ancient Mesopotamia, located in what's now southern Iraq. It thrived around 4,000 years ago, complete with temples, ziggurats, and royal tombs. Archaeologists even found the Standard of a stunning mosaic showing scenes of war and peace, offering a rare glimpse into early urban civilization. Work hardening happens when a metal becomes stronger, the more it's bent or hammered. Each time it's deformed, the metal's internal crystal structure shifts, locking the atoms more tightly together. That's why blacksmiths could strengthen iron by repeated hammering, an ancient discovery that still underlies modern metalworking and engineering. The 30 Years' War raged across Central Europe from 1618 to 1648, beginning as a fight between Catholics and Protestants, but quickly turning into a political free-for-all. Entire regions were devastated, with millions dead from battle, famine, and disease. By the time it ended, Europe had changed forever, religiously, politically, and even demographically. The Cape Gauge, measuring 1,067 millimeters, is a type of narrow railway track used across Africa, Japan, and parts of Australia. It's slightly tighter than standard gauge, which makes it cheaper to build in rough terrain. Despite its limitations in speed, its durability and cost efficiency made it the practical choice for colonial-era railroads. Time reversal symmetry is a fascinating idea in physics. The notion that if you played the universe backward, the fundamental laws would still make sense. At the atomic level, particles can behave the same whether time moves forward or backward. It's like watching a pool game in reverse. The collisions still follow the same rules, just backward. The Barnum effect, also called the Forer effect, is what makes vague statements feel deeply personal. When someone reads a horoscope that says, "You value honesty but sometimes feel misunderstood," it feels tailor-made, even though it could fit anyone. It's named after showman P.T. Barnum, who famously said there's a little something for everyone. For decades, scientists were puzzled by an underwater sound called the bioduck, recorded near Antarctica. It was rhythmic, mechanical, and utterly mysterious until 2014, when researchers finally identified it as the call of the Antarctic minke whale. What sounded like a submarine's hum turned out to be one of nature's strangest songs. The Eltanin antenna was an odd object photographed on the seafloor in 1964 by the research ship Eltanin. It looked like a metal antenna sticking out of the mud, sparking theories about alien probes. Decades later, scientists identified it as a type of carnivorous sponge, a perfect example of how mystery often meets science halfway. The Curse of the Pharaohs became a worldwide obsession after Howard Carter discovered Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. When a few expedition members died unexpectedly, rumors spread of an ancient curse. But statistical studies later showed no unusual deaths at all. It was pure coincidence wrapped in a perfect media myth. The Devshirme was an Ottoman system that recruited young Christian boys from the Balkans. They were converted to Islam, trained as soldiers or administrators, and could rise to great power, some even becoming grand viziers. It was both brutal and strangely merit-based, turning captured boys into some of the empire's most elite men. Scagliola is a centuries-old art of faking marble, using plaster, pigments, and glue. Italian craftsmen mastered it during the Renaissance, creating tabletops and columns that looked exactly like real stone. It's cheaper and more flexible than marble, but just as elegant. A kind of architectural illusion perfected long before modern composites. The Black Knight satellite is a popular conspiracy theory, claiming that an alien spacecraft has orbited Earth for thousands of years. The evidence comes from a misidentified piece of space debris photographed in 1960. Despite countless debunks, it remains a favorite story for those who love mixing science with mystery. The Great Unconformity is one of geology's strangest gaps, a missing slice of Earth's history ranging from 100 million to a billion years. In the Grand Canyon and elsewhere, younger rocks sit directly atop ancient ones. With all that middle time gone, scientists still debate what erased it: erosion, ice, or something else entirely. A non-Newtonian fluid is a liquid that breaks the rules of normal flow. Ketchup, for instance, stays thick until you shake or squeeze it. Then it suddenly runs. The same goes for cornstarch and water mixtures, which can act like a solid when hit. These fluids remind us that not all liquids play by Newton's laws. The Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE saw King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans hold off a massive Persian army led by Xerxes I. Though they were eventually defeated, their stand became legendary for its courage and strategy. The narrow pass of Thermopylae made sheer bravery count more than numbers. The Paris Agreement's 1.5 degrees Celsius goal isn't arbitrary. It's based on avoiding major climate tipping points. Beyond that threshold, the Greenland ice sheet could collapse, coral reefs could vanish, and weather systems could spiral out of control. The limit acts as a line between difficult climate change and potentially irreversible damage. The outgroup homogeneity effect describes how we tend to see people outside our own group as all the same. For example, someone might say, all teenagers act alike, or all politicians are the same. It's a mental shortcut that simplifies the world, but at the cost of empathy and accuracy. Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, became one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. It housed the legendary Library of Alexandria, a beacon of ancient knowledge. Today, it's still Egypt's main port, a blend of Greek heritage, Egyptian culture, and modern life, sitting right by the Mediterranean. The Auger effect occurs when an atom with an empty inner electron shell fills that gap by kicking out another electron instead of releasing light. It's like a game of musical chairs at the atomic level. One electron takes a seat, and another gets pushed out. This process helps scientists study atomic structure and X-ray emissions. And that's it for today's set of fascinating facts. If you enjoyed learning something new, stick around. There's always more where that came from. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.